before you just click out of the video and get mad at me in the comment section, I think there is a plausible path for Abdul Carter to be an Atlanta Falcon by the time day one of the NFL draft is over with. And I'm going to explain how on today's episode. Now, by the time you're watching this, depending on when I publish it, it could be Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, and I'm currently on my bachelor party in New Orleans, and I just think it'd be a fun thing to put this out there. So if we can get one subscriber off of today's episode, I'll wear my Falcons gear in New Orleans and just start creating some havoc and just stirring the pot with Saints fans. So let's run through a path for Abdul Carter to land in Atlanta, which I think even just yesterday, no one woke up thinking this had a chance. But hear me out for a moment. So based on what all the smoke is right now leading up to the draft, there's a little bit of a consensus that the first overall pick, and by a little I mean a lot, is going to be Cam Ward. Now, at number 2, the Browns reportedly have their sights set on Travis Hunter. Now, if the Browns don't go with Abdul Carter here, and this is where my theory could die. If they take Carter, then obviously there's no chance in my eyes for Atlanta to go from 15 to 2. But if the Browns go with Travis Hunter, and there's a lot of smoke around that at the moment, because you go back to not even a full week ago, or almost a full week ago now, depending on when you're watching this, Abdul Carter was a good favorite to be the number 2 pick for Cleveland on April 4th. Fast forward to the beginning of this week here, it's now Travis Hunter. So a lot of shifting going on for Hunter to the Browns at number 2. So let's just say that's the route Cleveland goes. They bring on the Heisman winner, the do-it-all man from Colorado. Well, the Giants at number 3, I could see going Shedeur Sanders, right? They added Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, but I don't think that rules them out from taking a quarterback. Joe Shane and Brian Dable are on the hot seat, so they could feel the pressure to draft a quarterback so that if things don't go well this year, they can sell Shedeur on the front office as a reason for them to get one more year. Plus, they might just actually like Shedeur Sanders as a player too. So I could see that happening. And if you look at the Giants, they don't really need Abdul Carter. They've got Dexter Lawrence on the inside. They've got Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau coming off the edge. This is a position, despite how bad they were, they are, I wouldn't say set at, but they're in a good spot. So they may decide, hey, we've got good edge rushers as it is. Let's take a chance on a quarterback instead. So if the Giants don't go with Abdul Carter, now it starts to potentially spiral. Because the Patriots at 4, I could see going with Armand Membou. That's the offensive tackle from Missouri. And Membou, I don't think is looked at as a better prospect than Carter, but the Patriots in free agency were very busy on the defensive side of the ball in year 1 under Mike Vrabel. They made a lot of additions to that defense. Milton Williams signs a huge contract from the Eagles. Harold Landry comes over from Tennessee. Carlton Davis signed or traded from the Lions. Robert Spillane from the Raiders. There was a lot of money thrown on the defensive side of the ball. So might not be a bad idea to kind of balance it out and go, hey, in the draft, we're going to prioritize protecting Drake May now because our offensive line is awful. Just look at their Pro Football Focus ranks. Left tackle, never heard of that guy, 69 out of 81. Not nice. Cole Strange, never healthy. Garrett Bradbury, average on a good day. Their best player is a right guard that no one's ever heard of. Morgan Moses was signed as a insurance policy. I don't think he's looked at as hey, we have our, not that he's a bad starter, but it doesn't mean you can't look to improve. So after looking over the Patriots' offensive line and their PFF ranks, Membou just makes a lot of sense to me if New England's serious about investing in Drake May and sure, passing on a great defensive player, but also making sure May is healthy. So that's one option. Say Will Campbell out of LSU. So you got 2 options right now for the Patriots in round 1 to add to their offensive line and make sure that Drake May doesn't get stretched off the field next season. Now, before we move on to the next pick that could result in Atlanta moving up, quick shout out to our friends over at Game Time. Game Time makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. So if you want to go to a Braves game, if they ever start to win a few games here, or a Hawks game, it's an excellent place to visit because Game Time helps you guys save money. When you download the Game Time app and use code CHATSPORTS, you're going to save $20 off your first purchase. I like to think of that as, hey, should I go to the game? All right, let's go because Game Time's going to cover my parking or cover my first concession stand run. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHAT Sports for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So if that's the path for New England, which I think is a very realistic path, the Jags at 5 are in a weird spot. Everyone's mocking them to take Mason Graham. I don't know if that's really what Jacksonville would want to do in that situation. Sure, Abdul Carter would be a great pick too, but you've got Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen. Where does Carter fit in there? You could go with Graham, but Mason Smith and Devon Hamilton, a couple of day 2 picks from the last few drafts that I think you could be a little bit more patient with. So my idea for Atlanta would be, in this spot, call Jacksonville and say, listen, Carter doesn't really have a spot on your roster right now. You're kind of all right at defensive tackle. Why don't you just take on an extra first-round pick, and we'll take pick number 5 off your hands? You move back 10 spots, which financially helps you out, so you get a little bit extra cap savings. You'll still get a good player at 15, and next year you have 2 first-round draft picks. In a draft class that's not filled with grade 1, round 1 talent, it may not be bad for Jacksonville to go, all right, let's just kind of take our 5-iron out here and hit it down the middle and not try and swing for the fences and let Atlanta do that. So this is a rough idea as to what it would cost going off of what the Cardinals did back in 2023 to jump up to number 6 with the Detroit Lions. This was 12-6, so not as big of a jump, but it cost Arizona their 2nd-round pick and a 5th-round pick in exchange for a 1st and a 3rd. So I won't get too in the weeds on this. I think 2 firsts for 1 could get it done. And at that stage, ask yourself, who would you rather have? Abdul Carter or Michael Williams and the 20th pick in next year's draft? If it was this year's draft, ask yourself, would you rather have Abdul Carter or Michael Williams and like Luther Burden? I'm taking Abdul Carter. I know more picks always sounds better, but sometimes you don't have to overthink it. Sometimes you can look at a player who had 12 sacks in year 1 as a true defensive end and has incredible physical traits, great size, and just think, yeah, let's just make the move up and take, hopefully, the answer to this franchise's never-ending quest for a pass rusher. And all it costs you is 1 future first. I'm doing it, and I'm not thinking twice about it. And if you're with me, hit that thumbs up button. That we can get a good head count of who's on my team. Because look at this front 5, it's not very intimidating. But you slap Abdul Carter opposite of Leonard Floyd, and then Rook and Zach Harrison take a big leap forward in years 2 and 3. Onyemata continues to be a stout run stopper in the middle. And I'm not going to try and sell this defense as world-class in 2025, but it's going to be in a much better direction with Carter for the future. Like I said, there's a lot to like about his game. I don't think he's one of the greatest pass rushers to go into the draft like Myles Garrett was, or maybe even some of the hype like Aiden Hutchinson or Trayvon Walker, but I think you're going to find a guy who's going to be a 10 to 15 sack player after a few years. The biggest knock on Abdul Carter is the lack of play strength. That and a little bit of newness to the position. I'm here to say he's 21 years old. Don't you think as he gets a little bit older, like every other human being, he'll start to get some of that man strength a little bit and really fill out his frame and not be a liability when it comes to setting the edge and being an anchor because of the lack of play strength? He's 21. Give him 2 or 3 years, and I think he really could, not just because they both went to Penn State, have a lot of similarities to Micah Parsons. And if I tell you Abdul Carter is 90% of Micah Parsons, are you making that deal? I am. I'm giving up a future first and pick 15 for 90% of Micah Parsons, without a doubt in my mind. Now, the one thing Atlanta has to do some homework on is some of their favorite potential draft targets in this year's draft have some skeletons in their closet. Mike Green, not once but twice, accused of sexual assault, never charged, all allegations. And some not so allegations, but some hardcore facts here. Abdul Carter was charged with a misdemeanor for having a little bit of pot in his dorm room, September 2023. You know, who hasn't amongst us here? Yeah. And not me, of course. Could never. And he was also, once again, charged. Ree put his hand up, so half the podcast right now. Charged with simple assault in April of 2024. This one's a little bit more serious. So the story is that his car was about to be towed. He ran out to the tow truck driver. Did not believe he was a tow truck driver initially. I'm not really sure how he got to that conclusion. I don't know anyone that just has a tow truck for fun. But went to confront him about the whole thing. Long story medium, he dragged him out of the tow truck and threw him on the ground. And police were called, and he had to do a little bit like community service. I don't think he actually served time or anything like that. But not once but twice he's had some run-ins with the law. So teams are going to have to be comfortable with not just the off-the-field issues, but also a little bit of the injury concern, because during the combine, it was discovered that in his right foot, he has a stress fracture. So I won't say he's the cleanest prospect, but man, if you could jump up to 5 with Jacksonville. I mean, go back to that mock draft real quick here, Reed. I know it seems like such a reach for this to happen, but where do I go wrong here? Cam Ward, betting favorite to go 1. Travis Hunter, betting favorite to go 2. Travis Hunter, number 2. Shedeur Sanders, he could fall past the Giants. Or New York, I think, could very realistically take him. Now, the Patriots could definitely be foaming at the mouth to take Abdul Carter, and I won't say that's, unlikely here. But they invested so much defensively as is. Probably time to build up that offensive line a little bit to give your young quarterback a chance. This might be one of those instances of, mind over heart, or heart over where you just got to do what's best for your team and not get carried away with the possibility of taking the best player, but not at our biggest need. New England has to address the offensive line, and it's not a very good draft class at that position. How do I know that? Because Dan Moore, the Steelers' old left tackle who sucked, got $80 million from the Titans. That's what the Titans thought about when looking at the draft prospect for the tackle position to try and protect Cam Ward. They decided to spend $80 million on crappy Dan Moore. So if this all happens, Jacksonville at 5, they could say, nope, we're staying put and we are taking Abdul Carter. But they could look at a future first and say, hey, we've already got 2 great edge rushers. We just kind of move back a few spots and play it safe. And it could be a great win-win for both parties. So that's where I'm kind of gravitating towards right now. I think if you make this trade, you could, in round 1, obviously secure Abdul Carter. You'd still have your second-round draft pick, which would afford you some flexibility because you may not feel so, inclined to go with another edge rusher since you got the number 1 pass rusher in this draft. And so as a result, then you could look at some other positions of need as well for this defense. They have not gone corner in a long time. So what about the Notre Dame corner, Benjamin Morrison? He missed almost all of half of 2024 with a hip injury. That's a concern for me. Don't get me wrong. But 2023, this guy was a surefire first-round draft pick if he were to go to the draft that year. comes back for an extra season, gets injured, and his stock takes a hit as a result. But this could be great for Atlanta because they don't have this dire need to find a new starting corner in the draft. They just need to improve that position and add some depth. Like I was saying, go back to 2023 Morrison, though. 3 interceptions, 13 pass breakups, and he gave up 279 yards in coverage. The guy was locked down. Now, this past year, he misses a lot of time, and that hip injury is definitely something teams have to do their homework on. But I think if you're Atlanta, you could look at this as, this is kind of good for us because we can afford to go after Morrison, take him in round number 2, and not expect him to go out there and be a day 1 starter for us. Because the Falcons, they've got 3 starting corners as is. A.J. Terrell, Mike Hughes, Clark Phillips, and D. Alford. So what they can do here is let Morrison get healthy, right? Give that hip some even more time because another team might say, hey, we need you to start right away for us. That's why we took you in round 2. But Atlanta can go, let's let 2025 be about you getting up to NFL game speed, absorbing the game from the sideline, and letting that hip get 100% healthy. And then in 2026, if we want to move on from Mike Hughes, we've already got a replacement. Worst case scenario, you've got incredible depth at a cornerstone position. So that's going to do it for us on today's episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed it, do me a big favor. Click that thumbs up button down below.